All I knew about Control before playing it was that there's this big pyramid thing, and you play as a lady using her psychic powers to throw things at enemies, which is actually the gameplay in a nutshell, but of course, there's a lot more to it. In Control, you play as Jessie Faden, a woman who enters the Federal Bureau of Control, a secret government organization that deals with supernatural phenomena. Along the way, she seems to be talking to herself, or at least someone else in her head. It's weird, but the Bureau itself is even weirder. Like, the entire building seems to be completely empty, and censored SCP-looking documents are scattered around offices. Not long after seeing all that, Jessie acquires the service weapon, making her the new director of the FBC. So she'll have to clean things up in the building by dealing with the Hiss, supernatural entities that come from another astral plane. And on top of all that, Jessie's looking for her missing brother. So yeah, she has a lot on her plate. The game doesn't explain much at the start, it just places you in the middle of everything. Jessie herself seems to know a few things, but as the player, I was very confused. It took a while before I realized that the best way to deal with everything was to roll with it. Some things will make sense in time, but others just exist in Control's world, I guess. Employees' bodies floating around? Normal. The FBC's shape-shifting interior? Totally normal. FMV videos that range from informative to creepy?
Find your mama together.
Also normal. All of these things make for an unsettling but intriguing atmosphere. There's a lot to learn about though, like the types of hiss, and the jargon used around the oldest house, which is another name for the FBC's building. Terms like objects of power, altered world events, and other stuff are constantly thrown around in the game. The characters shed some light on certain things if you exhaust their dialogue, but I still think it was overwhelming at times. I like stories that deal with the unknown though, so I found everything interesting despite the information overload. The supernatural themes of the game actually reminded me of Alan Wake, which is another game by Remedy that's great, by the way. Control has a lot of references to it too, and I think both games are supposed to exist in the same universe. But from what I remember, Alan Wake's story was easier to process. In terms of gameplay, Control is more free and fast-paced. Exploring the oldest house felt almost like a Metroidvania, where you can backtrack and explore lots of optional areas. Most places are locked, but you'll gradually gain access to each level as you collect more security cards. Throughout the oldest house, you'll be dealing with the Hiss, which are the main enemies of Control. They're basically an entity that infects people like a virus and exploits their talents. Since the oldest house is full of employees with combat skills, those talents include a lot of firepower. The service weapon that Jessie gets at the start functions like a revolver, except it never runs out of ammo. It does have a cooldown, so you have to wait for it to recharge after firing a certain number of bullets. Later on, you'll get to morph the service weapon into different forms, so it can turn into a shotgun or a piercing weapon. Both were my preferred weapons in combat though. It was satisfying to charge attacks into headshots and blast enemies at close range. In addition to the morphing gun, mods can be installed to buff Jessie's service weapon and her abilities. Each mod has a different rarity level, with the higher ones providing better bonuses. While the mods are useful, I feel like Control gives way too much. I ended up deconstructing them or just not picking them up, and there were so many types that it got complicated to sort through them. For my playstyle, I kept things simple by focusing on rare mods with energy and damage boosts. And then there are the psychic abilities, the main feature of Control's gameplay. There are a few optional abilities that you can get, but the first main one is Launch, which lets you toss nearby objects at enemies. Almost everything can be lifted and thrown in this game, so it can get quite destructive. Like, you can make a complete mess out of entire rooms in Control by grabbing chunks of concrete and other materials nearby. But even without the launch ability, I thought that the physics in this game was fun to play with. At one point, I found a cafeteria full of chairs and tables. Sure, it would have been fun to trash the whole place with my powers, but I decided to do it the old-fashioned way. But yeah, launch is definitely my favorite thing about Control's gameplay. I loved alternating between shooting enemies and throwing random stuff at them. It gets even more fun when you gain the ability to levitate. But just like the service weapon, her psychic powers have a cooldown, so part of the challenge is surviving through that. Enemies can quickly kill you if you're not moving or hiding behind cover. This made things difficult at times, and it didn't help that there was no way to manually save the game. It got kinda annoying whenever I died and respawned somewhere far away. Oh yeah, Control doesn't have automatic checkpoints either. The checkpoint system is like a Souls game, so you have to interact with spots called control points. And just like bonfires, you can respawn here, upgrade equipment, and fast travel to other points. As for upgrades, all of Jessie's powers can be upgraded by spending ability points. Points are received from completing missions, and if you acquire enough, milestone rewards are unlocked, giving you additional slots for mods. I honestly didn't do much of the side missions, so I can't go into detail about them, but they had a variety of challenges, from doing some light puzzle solving and fighting bosses. Part of what made me uninterested in doing them was the map. It confused me for most of the game, especially when I had to go to different levels. Branching paths couldn't be isolated per floor, so I got lost a lot. It didn't help that the game had this very corporate-looking architecture. I mean, it's a distinct style for sure, and it looks good, but I didn't think it was fun to get lost in. What saved me from getting even more lost were the signs in the game. I don't know how many times they put me in the right path, so they're surprisingly useful. Overall, I thought that Control was a pretty good game. Apart from the things that I mentioned earlier, the other issues I had with it were more on the technical side, since I played this on a base PS4. Like, the frame drops were noticeable during big fights, and the game stuttered every now and then. Texture pop-ins were a frequent thing too, which got distracting, particularly when I wanted to read signs or look at portraits. But I was having fun with the game, so those weren't a game breaker for me. And the game still looks good for a 2019 title on the PS4. The facial animations were a little uncanny at times, but it wasn't enough to distract me. If you're the type who's bothered by technical issues though, then I think Control's best played on next-gen consoles or on PC. I recommend it if you want a great narrative-driven game full of secrets and mysteries. Let me know what you thought about the video. Oh yeah, I didn't know where to insert this in the actual video, so I'll just say it now. I want to recommend a series called Severance to everyone who hasn't watched it yet. I was actually watching the show right when I started my playthrough of this game, and it gave me massive Control vibes. So if you like the story and concept of Control, you might like Severance. Plus, the show's just amazing overall. I can't wait for the next season. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.